In this movie, we're going to set up the main page of the forum. And essentially, we won't need anything of what we had in our main.php file with the login system because it was just a dummy system there. Now, we're going to include the forum.inc file, and we're going to test, first of all, to see if the user is not logged in. If they're not logged in, then that's a problem, and we need to use our fail function and let them know that they're not logged in was the problem. We're going to say true to the serious argument, and that'll pop them straight back to the entrance page where their session will be destroyed. If, however, they have been logged in, then we will set up a page that says the Great Debate as the title and topics for the debate as the header. Then we're going to list a number of threads, and we're going to set up a variable threads per page, let's say 12 to be conservative, and then we're going to set up an offset variable so that as we move from one page to the next, we are able to show a different set of threads depending on whether the user is moving back in time to older threads or forward in time to newer threads. So we'll need an offset, and if there's no offset when the user arrives, that means it's the first time they've arrived at the page, and therefore we need to set the offset to 1. We also need to add to our offset an increment variable. We're going to look at that a little later, to our threads multiplied by the number of threads per page. This increment variable will be passed from the navigation that we're going to include at the bottom of this page. We also need to register where the user is within the threads. That is the thread list offset variable. Next thing we need to do is connect to the database, which we're going to use with our function, and then we need to query the database with quite a complex query, and that's going to take the threads, the title of the threads, and then we're going to use the aggregate function max to find out the maximum thread, and we're going to call that latest. That's the latest post to have been added to that thread, and we're going to join those on the thread ID column in both posts and threads tables. Finally, we're going to include a limit on the number of records we're going to return, which is a threads list offset -1, and then we're going to call the threads per page the actual limit of the number of records that's going to return. If we don't get a result from our database, we need to call our fail function. Now let's set up a variable which counts the number of rows in the result we got back from that query. Now we're going to set up a little part of the screen that shows the user. And we're going to, first of all, either specify if they're a mod or a user. And then we're going to put the actual username straight after that. And we're going to close that bold tag, and then we're going to have a link to the enter page, which is just going to say log out, so the user can easily log out at any point. Then we're going to store all the thread titles in a table on the page, and we're going to make our table with a border of 0, effectively invisible. First of all, we're going to set up something to identify what each of the columns means here, and in this case it's going to be the thread title and then we're going to include the date when the last post was made for that particular thread. Now we're going to set up a loop that's going to loop through all the results we've got back from our querying of the database. We're going to use a while loop to get every result that was returned. And with each result we're going to show and we're going to make each of these thread titles a hyperlink. And we're going to include a link to the thread.php page, which is going to be the page where we can view all the posts within thread. Then we're going to have the actual name of the thread. Then we're going to close that hyperlink tag and the bold and the paragraph tags, and finally that cell of the table. In the next one we're going to include the there we go. That's the latest posting that was made to that particular thread is included in the right hand column.